Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Craig Salvalaggio, Chief Operating Officer of Applied Manufacturing Technologies, which is based in Orion, Michigan. In this role, he not only leads overall operations, but he also oversees sales, engineering, and talent management, using his 19 years of automation experience with AMT, his technical and robotic skills, and his leadership to drive growth and diversity of both the systems and services market segments. Craig is also actively involved in the Robotics Industry Association as a board of director, committee member, and the co-chair of the Certified Integrator Committee. Craig, welcome to the podcast.
Lisa, thanks for having me.
Why don't we start by finding out about how you started in control system integration?
That's great. I like to talk about my background. Automation and systems integration really runs through AMT's rich history and culture. Personally, I've been excited about robotics and machine vision from my early days in the Lake Superior State University lab, working on very dated robot arm technology and vision with some of the first systems with Adept. And some people may know this, but the Unimate Puma robot arm, where I was doing early on testing with accuracy versus repeatability. And, early in my career, I was really fortunate enough to have an opportunity to get started with a great company, with a great leader at AMT, and really a great technical mentor within the organization that, really kind of aligned me with some of the 2D and 3D vision guidance applications that were kind of early adopters at that time. And, a lot of the interfacing and calculations that we see today based in libraries, it really didn't exist. So early on, I was really fortunate to be part of some leading technologies within the robot industry space. And, as I got more experienced learning the technology, I really kind of adapted my passion towards the business case for automation and really started asking fundamental questions about how do you make manufacturing within the U.S. and globally, more competitive. And also the other passion for me was really getting people started in their careers, because I personally had the chance to do so, and I wanted to give back.
Okay, this is going to maybe a little bit of a tougher question, but how do you describe to lay people what you do?
Yeah, so when you're talking with your neighbors or friends that aren't in a technical industry, maybe they're legal or medical, they say, "What do you do?" And you talk about robots, and in context, it's tough for them to understand, what that is, based on what they see in the markets. But in one sentence, what we tell people is we place robots and automation in factories to help companies become more productive and more competitive.
Okay, turning to AMT then, tell us about how it began and evolved.
Yeah, so AMT started in 1989 as an engineering services organization, really focused on the growth of robotics in a lot of the automotive companies. Our founder and still CEO today, Mike Jacobs, started the company after his initial role with GMF, which was a joint venture with General Motors and Fanuc, where he was really pioneering the early days of robotic simulation. And, he envisioned a future of needing more engineers in the market to service the growth that was happening in automotive body shop welding and other such industries. And, started this organization to support that growth. Early on, the automotive growth and our strong tie to General Motors served us very well. It allowed us to build a full-service engineering capabilities. We were in the early adopters of developing very specific standards for large-scale automation deployment. And a lot of that foundational work really led to our competency and the ability to expand and do more complete design and build of solutions. As we really diversified the business starting in the early 2000s, we started building turnkey solutions and really saw that as a necessary growth path for the company to stay on top of latest technologies, leverage the knowledge that we had internally within the organization because we've seen so much automation, both good and bad, and then really provide that opportunity for those career paths for those engineers that I was really passionate about. And so through a series of strategic acquisitions, leadership hires, keeping some strategic objectives within the organization to enter new market segments really kind of allowed us to be where we are today, which is a full service engineering company that does systems integration and has a diversified customer base.
What about most recently? How has AMT been impacted by the pandemic? You mentioned automotive, for instance, that you were strong in that sector. Clearly, that's one of the sectors that's kind of being hit a little hard with all the lockdowns and shutdowns and quarantines or whatever word we're using for today. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, what a roller coaster the last many weeks have been. Certain aspects of our business got hit really hard, really fast, and then others really kind of maintain some steadiness. So, one of the things that AMT did really well, in fact, was we reacted fast. And what I mean by that is reacted fast with how we communicated this moving target that we only knew what was going on that day and could only predict the day ahead. And we were fortunate enough to have many systems on our build floor that were serving a critical supply chain industry of food manufacturing and the defense sector on aerospace. Those projects really allowed us to keep a critical element of the business moving in a very kind of safe and healthy way from a workload perspective. So some of the businesses, automotive and such, kind of turned off and kind of went to a grinding halt. And then some of our position based on our customer mix really allowed us to keep multiple departments moving fairly well through this. The three things I think I can point out that say are worth talking about is communication and over communicating. It started with the leadership of our organization and Mike Jacobs really starting to provide daily CEO updates, some of it related to what we knew that day, but some of it allowing some vulnerability in the organization to say, hey, we're leaders, we're all human, we're going through this emotional experience together, and we're going to get through it together. And during that first couple of weeks where there was a lot of uncertainty and you're spiraling in a downward direction, that was really needed to ensure that the organization knew that the company had their backs and we were going to support them, even though we were going through difficult times as far as workload and that such. Now, the other thing we did is inclusion. So you look at a normal operating day, and there's silos of groups or groups that talk to one another more. We started doing daily huddles where there was larger groups, 30 plus people, and made sure that the sales information was shared with different departments, made sure that people in the field understood what activity was going on. We included all aspects from IT to HR. As you go through this, where your personal life based on work from home orders, it really mixes with business. It starts to create that humility in all of us, and that's something I think we did well as an organization. The second one really was having a thematic goal. If you've ever read much of Pat Lencioni's work, it's relatable to what they call a rallying cry. It was magnificent to see the organization. It's impacted in such a way when you all come together on this thematic goal, so a centralized theme that everybody's working towards, what kind of achievements you can pull off in such a short period of time. And we created a thematic goal tied around getting people back to work through some training programs that we developed for anybody that had been impacted negatively by their workload. And that was the original rallying cry. And then we really started tying that to Confidence Day, which is when we all return in a healthy and safe environment and our customers' perspective is similar, and then we can resume back to some level of normal operating levels that would allow our economic engine and flywheel to sustain the business. And that's what we're rallying around every day in our updates, is that Return to Confidence Day. And then just the third one to mention is a number of employees, unsolicited by the organization, on their own started producing 3D printed face shield bands in conjunction with First Robotic and a few other associations. And they did this on their own without any recognition, and just they deserve a lot of kudos for supporting the industry and industries that they're not typically involved in.
How many employees do you have, and did you move them all to remote?
So there's about 130 employees at AMT currently, and there's only about 10 people working currently in our shop manufacturing floor environment, which we rotate in and out and space out. And then we have one or two program managers, and then our executive team rotates out weekly. Basically, we all take a day a week. And in the weeks ahead here, we'll be slowly starting more people in the building. So our attention to detail on cleaning and understanding what that guidelines for returning back to work is probably our largest challenge right now.
I've been working with associations for my whole career, and I can honestly say I have never experienced a group of business professionals so willing to share, collaborate, and support one another as the CSIA community. During these unprecedented times, having a group of peers to turn to is invaluable. Whether the current climate means your phone is ringing off the hook or you're chewing your nails to the quick, now is the time to invest in your company, yourself, and this unique community that has a culture of sharing baked into its DNA. You'll also have access to member benefits such as best practices, insurance and legal programs, marketing tools, professional development opportunities, and so much more. To find out how you can join and contribute to this one-of-a-kind organization, visit www.controlsys.org/member-services. Look, I know these are some crazy times, but the CSIA community is ready to be by your side. All you have to do is join us. Aside from the COVID-19 disruption, how has AMT grown or changed in the past year, and what do you expect for your company in the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, so for AMT, the size of our turnkey automation projects has started to get larger with a lot more content. And, you look back maybe 10 plus years, we had done a lot of single robotic cells, smaller automation, single application. And now our ability to really take on more scope and more content has been increasing with every project due to the maturity of the relationships with our customers. And then just also our ability to take on, a start to finish type of project where you own the process all the way through. That's where, the size of the projects really starts to develop in scope. And, that started with some engineering analysis, building our first turnkey thermoforming handling system where we're handling product from press, conveyance, through palletization and pack out. And we've done a number of similar projects related to case handling, sortation, and pack out automation.
What do you think the smartest decision your company made recently was?
So I think it started in 2001 where we said diversification is critical in everything that we do. Again, we were coming off those early, late 90s, very automotive-centric days. And again, we respect that business, and that served us very well, and we still serve it with grace today. But it was diversification and that theme that said, okay, we got to continue with our strategic objectives to diversify because that will one day pay off. And that's been in place since 2001. With that, we changed to a more sales-forward approach, a sales-driven organization that really paid close attention to a smaller amount of customers where you gave them that experience that they wanted. And it was a little bit of a differentiator because you develop much more deeper relationships and allowed us to kind of focus in on a few industries and then just really hone in those customer relationships.
So let's talk a little bit more about your unique approach to projects. What's unique? What's more, other than, what you just said previously, what's unique about how you approach a project?
So I always remind everybody, stick to the process. Even when it's uncomfortable, stick to the process. Early on in the company's history, we developed a great set of tools and the talent pipeline that was very, process driven towards program management. It created very, habitual efforts that ultimately create consistency in our approach. It starts right from the sales process, understanding the application, the process, the solution, and the relationship. And in some cases, a customer asks for something, but it's really not the right thing for them. So we start really at the front end by saying, here's what you really need. And we're not afraid to have those difficult conversations up front. And then it's about data transparency all the way through the project after that, through project kickoff, all the way through so that it leads to the customer. And our latest enhancement really has been a longer, more detailed kickoff process that you really capture that time scope based milestones and then, calibrate internally. And then once we're calibrated internally, ensure that the customer has an open line of communication, is never waiting for the next round of communication. They're anticipating that you will be ahead of what their expectations are.
If you had to guess, or maybe you know for sure, how much of your business is repeat and why do they return?
The initial number I would say is just a little over 60%, probably higher if I look through the actual analytics. The reason I say the 60% mark is because some of our business is cyclical, where we're really engaged for a couple of year period, and then there's a time where there's no model changeover or there's a life cycle expectancy, and that kind of goes quiet for a little bit. The other is, there's a number, I would say, in the last 2 years where the partnerships, I would say, have really strengthened to a point where, we're only doing business together. And we're just in a role where, from a price point, from a service, from an expectation standpoint, we're really aligned. And that's where I would say that number is starting to increase. Part of how we get there really is ensuring that, attention to detail. We're not the low cost guys that come in and underbid. We're attention to detail, quality in our design, safety first thinking. It's part of our, we understand all the aspects of RIA 1506-2012 on risk assessments. We bake that into our design early on, focus on that customer experience and don't try to please the entire market.
What suppliers do you work with?
We have a number of suppliers. We work with everyone from conveyor companies to all the technology companies, whether it's the robotic arms, the conveyors, the PLCs, the vision systems, the barcode readers. Work with kind of all those technology partners, fabricators as well. So there's quite a long list. Try to pick a couple and make sure that they're more strategic in nature.
Without naming names, unless you want to or are allowed to, tell us about a project that was super challenging and what you did to solve the customer's problem.
So we had a recent project that we were reluctantly going to take on was a very challenging, basically case handling, sortation, and palletizing system that had a lot of components with a very compressed timeline. And with the compressed timeline, meaning we needed to get engineering items on order without the complete design fully fleshed out from a throughput standpoint and specifications. We had to take a couple of chances. The other aspect of that was the installation schedule had to accommodate 4 cascading weekends. And we had to take old equipment out and put new equipment in. We had to do facilities management and had some very interesting rigging applications. From runoff on our floor by Friday at noon, we had to have the shipping trucks ready by 5 p.m. to show up at a site 2 hours from here, where an evening crew would then start unloading the equipment and have a sequential power on phases by Sunday morning. We did this over 4 cascading weekends. And you talk about team and a thematic goal and what you can accomplish if everybody's rallied around it. We had a schedule for each of the weekends down to 15-minute increments to know if we were on track or off track, because at a certain time by day 2 or on Saturday, we had to know when to pull the plug or not to get the company back into production by Sunday evening. What a fantastic opportunity to learn and grow and become better.
Are you certified or endorsed with any companies or organizations you'd like to mention?
So there's really 2 specific certifications and partnerships that we work with, and then 2 really associations that we're involved in. And you heard about me speaking with GMF and FANUC and our tight relationship with many people in the entire organization, leadership all the way down. That stems from Mike's early on initiatives and relationships with GMF. And we're an exclusive FANUC robotics certified integrator and partner, and that has allowed us to achieve great things with a great product. And then Rockwell is our other technology partner, where we work with them almost exclusively and have that support program two-way advantage. The second is really our involvement in industry associations. So one of the largest that we're involved in is the RIA, which is the Robotics Industry Association, a daughter association to A3. And the other is the CSIA, where Lisa, I got to meet you a couple of years back at one of the events where we got to know one another. And I thought it was really beneficial for us to be part of this network, to be part of the companies that are within this network, and really leverage the networking, the peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, and some of the exchange programs to really kind of stand out in a growing industry. And so those are kind of the four primary relationships.
With so many people working from home, canceling in-person meetings and events, and spending more and more time online, it's more important than ever that your digital presence is top-notch and that you find creative ways to maximize your marketing resources and get in front of your customers. The Industrial Automation Exchange and the Talking Industrial Automation podcast are the perfect places to start. The Exchange offers upgrades, packages, and display opportunities to ensure your brand is top of mind during your customers' complicated, research-based buying journey. The Talking Industrial Automation podcast can also help because now you can place your 60-second spot into the podcast. It's super easy and a unique way to reach new audiences. To learn more about the packages and advertising opportunities or how to become a podcast sponsor, contact me, Lisa Richter, at INDUSTRYDIR@controlsys.org. Let's face it, it's a digital world out there, and you need to make sure your company doesn't get left behind. Let the Exchange and podcast go to work for you. What would you say the biggest benefit of your CSIA membership is for AMT?
So really, it's the peer-to-peer networking of like-minded leaders and like-minded companies. There's so much to learn from one another with respect to business practices and industry learning that we shouldn't be afraid of. There's competing forces out there where we're all maybe have the same customer base, but at the end of the day, there's enough for all of us. We'll win some, we'll lose some. And when you work with the competing forces that are out there and learn from one another, you can glean a lot of stuff from that. That allows us to become all more hungry, a little more humble, and a little smarter about our approach to business.
Why should a prospective customer hire a CSIA member versus a non-member or somebody else in the industry?
It's one thing where companies always say, I don't have time to go through these certifications, and what can it do for me? And really, I say the program, supports really a network of companies that possess all capabilities at a very high level to deliver engineering solutions, systems, and services that are reliable and of good quality. And by going through the certification and choosing a company that's gone through that and is a member of here, you have a higher probability of selecting the right partner.
When someone asks, why should I hire a CSI certified, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so the certification I think is great because it's just that self-assessment and benchmark in industry that says, hey, I went through this rigorous process. It might have been painful. I might not have had enough time for it, but boy, I'm glad I did at the end of that. And here's the reasons why. And AMT is not currently certified by the CSIA, but it's looking and investigating that program right now. We're highly involved in the Robotics Industry Association, and we had put a lot of time into that, and that still served us well. But we have our management team looking at the certification right now because it differentiates a little bit. The RIA's program is, again, Certified Integrator Program, focused a little bit more on a little more technical, a little more on safety practices, and whereas the CSIA is a little bit more on business practices and making sure that all those things, whether you're a 5-person team or a 300-person integrator, those all change at a certain aspect of the growth and the life cycle of your company. And this program is really kind of achieved at that growth trajectory, making sure that you have good processes in place. And I would also say, you look at hiring a CSIA integrator, it allows you to do a couple of things. From a manufacturing standpoint, it says, I now have confidence that I'm working with a company that follows best practices and understands some of the industry standards. It says I'm working with people that want to achieve a high level of quality. You're working with proven industry leaders. You're working with organizations that want to measure customer satisfaction and document the record of that based on previous projects. You're doing risk mitigation by ensuring that they have business practices and that higher level of proficiency. And then you look at the breadth and depth of knowledge, right? You're working with companies that want to benchmark themselves against other competition and learn from that. And, with all that, you get this deeper commitment and accountability in your business model. It ties into how you look at applications, your internal processes, the technologies that you use, and how you test your people, how you train your people, and all that investment. And then at the end of the day, it's about staying out of trouble for everybody. It's business risk mitigation, and by going through the process, you're taking those initial steps to say, we're investing both sides, both in the industry and in your own business practices.
What advice would you give to a prospective customer who is researching automation / controls engineers or system integrators?
There's kind of two threads there. I would say, the best thing you can do, especially when you're investigating maybe a market space that's unknown, is educate yourself on where the current technology stands. And, you can reach out to, there's good associations that help you do that. And CSIA is one of those where it can lead you in the right direction. Here's a group of individuals that focus on this, and here's the reasons why. So a little bit of education to know what you're asking for as well. And, finding and make sure that you're treating the companies as a partnership. So finding a partner, not a supplier. You don't want just an automation supplier. You're looking for a company that's got your best interests in mind, that's guiding you, and really kind of showing you what the best way to approach it. Because again, you want to leverage the strengths of the network. You want to leverage the strengths of the integrators. That's why they're out there. Many manufacturers, and some do it well, where they want to self-integrate or kind of piecemeal things together or buy on low price versus quality. Everybody's got a different strategy, and that's okay. But you really want that partnership where you can call those people up at any time, and they'll answer the phone, and what kind of support you're going to get.
How should a customer go about choosing a system integrator?
Yeah, so the selection process kind of dovetails on my last statement. Really is, when you're a manufacturer and you go through that decision process, whether you go out for bid with an RFQ. Again, some people have these really detailed RFQs. Some people have a napkin sketch that they give you, and you go out to 10 or 6 bidders, and then you come in and then you make the selection process. The communication internally within those organizations is very critical. Sometimes it gets vetted in first round and then handed off to a procurement team where they have maybe a selection grid. I say go a little bit deeper. There's a couple of things that you can follow regardless of kind of who you are and where you're at. I always like to say, right size your business with the end user. And these are both two-way street conversations. So the size of project, the type of application, and the experience you have. So whether you're your manufacturer going to the integrator network with a certain size of a project, that size, whether it's a revenue size or technology scope or just kind of floor space related, it has to align well to get that proper attention within the company. So that's critical on both sides of the fence. Follow the processes within your organization. I always tell people to not skip steps, whether it's your program management discipline, how you approach risk assessments, or even skipping steps within your buy-off criteria. It goes back to that earlier, stick to the process, and it won't let you down. And then, update yourself and your team, know what the latest standards are. Sometimes safety standards drive cost into a project based on maybe some historical ways, but they also, drive what's required to meet new industry standards and to keep your workforce safe. And I always say, all the way through the process, make sure you go through those final acceptance. You don't skip those steps there. And, you agree to your performance and your buy-off criteria, and, you accept the system on both sides, and just be upfront and honest about what's required to get it across the finish line, whether there's delays or you're missing product, or your plant's not ready to accept the equipment. Just open up yourself to those communication channels both ways. And, remind your team, even when things get hot, that it's a partnership and we're going to live to fight this again. And we're all here to support one another.
Are you one of the 78% of CSIA members who said they wanted cybersecurity training? Well, now you've got it. CSIA has partnered with ISA to bring you a series of online courses that will get you the skills and expertise that are in high demand. This series will be offered throughout 2020 and is designed to prepare you for Cybersecurity Fundamentalist Specialist and Risk Assessment Specialist exams to earn certificates 1 and 2 of 4 that ultimately leads to the Cybersecurity Expert Badge. Best of all, you can access the material anywhere and anytime. To find out more, visit www.controlsys.org/cyber2020. Why not make this the year you earn your cybersecurity badges? I guarantee you won't regret it. What kinds of trends are you seeing in industrial automation right now?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we're seeing where the market might not be completely served based on the technology right now. So as we grow in our warehousing and automation aspect of the business and how we're serving that part of the industry, we're seeing a couple of things. There's technology maturity that still needs a little bit more advancing when it gets to mixed load depalletizing, and some of the new distribution that are adopting standard industrial robotic technology. And we're seeing a lot going on with just kind of the back half of factories, whether it's putting stuff in boxes or packing those cases out, sorting them, and then palletizing, turning the back half of your factory into more of a lights out operation. And then the other thing is we're seeing a lot of first timers. So a lot of companies that didn't have automation previously, looking to get a little more productivity out of their factories, get a little more uptime on the spindle, and a little bit more, related to labor, whether it's a shortage in the area, and new technologies being applied, whether it's power and force limiting, which is more collaborative robotic technology. That's a little bit lower price point entry based on the type of system you can kind of pare down into a single robot application, kind of ties into fenceless applications as well. And then just, all the technology from PLCs all the way through GUI interfaces and the robotic technologies becoming a little more easier to use, a little more widely adapted as people leverage the fact that if you combine a great workforce and the technology, you could be more competitive, have those workforce members be trained on higher skill jobs, which allows them to invest in their careers and provide more value to the organization versus displacement.
What challenges are your customers facing right now?
A lot of them right now are asking us to increase the rate in which automation is being deployed. So the biggest challenge our customers are facing right now is, how do I get automation deployed quickly to ensure I keep my manufacturing facilities moving at the rate at which the demand uptick is predicted? And so there's a respect for a timeline and what it takes to order capital equipment and to design something versus, order equipment without a spec. And there's that healthy balance where, maybe a project did a 28 to 32 week delivery and the expectation is now 16 to 18 weeks. And be careful that you shortcut the process. And it's one of those things where it's that education back and forth and coming back to something reasonable that both teams can sign up to.
In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing the automation marketplace today and in the future, especially in light of the current situation? And by the current situation, I mean the pandemic.
Yeah, it's obviously a number of challenges right now, and very optimistic of how we will return. But it goes back to finding that right partner, implementing the right solution beyond just the ROI calculations. Sometimes people just look at that number and make decisions based on that number, and they implement something that ends up getting turned off many years down the road, or it landlocks their facility. And you got to think about the bigger picture with respect to that. And then just the ability for how do you really expand your solution into something larger down the road, so that if your production does ramp up, your ability to flex and scale will be very, very important. I think number one, related to today and what we're going to see tomorrow, is getting people back to work in a confident manner, where they're staying safe, they're developing those new practices, and I think automation is going to prevail. And the way that we implement that, people are going to be appreciative of long-term supply chain and how that's impacted, and hopefully see that as an advantage for them to educate themselves on technology, on software, on machine learning. It's a fascinating environment, which even though my background is software and I'm more focused on the business now, I still dabble in the evenings on software. It's more to keep current, so that I can ensure that as we lead the organization together, that they know I'm relevant with the technology.
Are you optimistic about the future of the automation control system industry? And if so, why?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. If you look at, and I've done a number of CEO roundtables lately with a number of groups, some in supply chain, some in end user manufacturing for product that's in demand right now or in short supply. And, long term, automation and robotics and, how the technology is really maturing and the ease of use is really going to be required for manufacturing to stay competitive. I'm sure some companies are going to be going through reshoring exercises here to manage the risk globally and going through what that looks like. And if you look at an industry that you want to be in right now to support all that, and again, I mentioned the supply chain project we have on the floor right now. Again, I feel very well positioned, not only from the company's perspective, but hey, we're supporting industry. People who are staying at home, I'm counting on those supplies to be at those store shelves when they were short stocked 4 weeks back. They're counting on this robotic equipment and this automation to be able to produce that and to fill those and replenish that. And I'm proud to be a part of that industry and serving it greatly.
Plus, robots don't get COVID.
Yeah, exactly. It's again, it's that combination of managing your workforce, leveraging your current human intellect, and investing in your people, and the combination of both the technology and your current workforce, not displacing them but upskilling them, is really what's going to drive the productivity and our competitive advantage in the future.
What's the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
So let's see if I can do it in one sentence. Younger me and a younger vision of me, and I have many younger visions of me in the organization that I love to work with and mentor, is never stop learning and continue to invest in yourself. Your career will have many delayed gratifications, and strive every day to become the learning leader.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about AMT or Craig Salvalaggio, you can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Craig, for joining me today.
My pleasure, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.